Okay, so yeah, I guess when you're ready, go ahead and you can get started. It doesn't look like anyone else is going to join us tonight, and
Okay.
yeah, it's all you.
Well, before we went to the Gulf of Maine Research Institute, we did a unit over weathering and erosion. And in the unit that was like done by CPOP, we did a lot of things on watershed, and then I kind of just took it to another level. So the very first thing that we did was we looked at topographical maps, and they introduced what the topographical maps were and had a couple of examples. And then they actually got into groups and created their own. And how they did it was they started off, I think that's how you do it right there. They started off with like a landform that was kind of like a little basin, and then it had a plastic top to it. And they continued to add water to it. Here we go. And every time they added water to it, the um, the amount of landform that was showing would be less and less, which shows the elevation, and they drew lines around it to show the elevation increasing. And then eventually, at the end of it, they have a topographical map that they've created on their own of the landform. So that was a really fun activity that we did to show what topographical maps are and what their uses are. And then I went and we talked about watershed and how the surrounding landforms, like in Herman, all eventually end up in the Gulf of Maine. And so, of course, we went through and did the Google Earth to show the layout of what Herman is like. You know, obviously we focused on like Herman Mountain, and then we focused on different areas that are around in Herman that all kind of drain into, you know, Herman Pond that eventually go into the Penobscot River and so forth. And to demonstrate watershed, I took some buckets and I put them upside down, and we took like what was it, a trash bag. I cut it like in half, so it was like really really big, and I sprinkled a bunch of Kool-Aid around the different parts of Herman. So like one color Kool-Aid packet was on Herman Mountain, and there was another one that was the just like residential areas like the lawn and so forth. There was another one that represented the industrial park. There's a couple other ones, which I'll get to the next one. And then I put like a spray bottle, and I pretended like it was raining on the landform, and they actually got to see the colors all pooling down from the individual areas of Herman, and we kind of pretended that all pulled down into Herman Pond. And that was really, really cool for them to physically see those areas having their watershed go to the Herman Pond and then so forth. And then after that activity, we brainstormed some ways that our areas in Herman can eventually impact the watershed. And let's see, this is one of the examples of one of the groups that did it. We had like the farms in Herman, and these are some of the things that they mentioned, that the fertilizers can pollute the Gulf of Maine, the industrial park, you know, the gas could get into the river from the trucking industry and so forth. Herman Pond itself eventually going to the Gulf of Maine. You know, oil from the boats can, you know, travel to the Gulf of Maine through the watershed. Herman Mountain, they talked a lot about like the fake snow, and any kind of chemicals that are used or polluted onto the mountain. And then just lawns about like toxic materials. They talked about animal waste with their pets. And that was a really good way to kind of see how they personally impact our watershed, the Gulf of Maine, every day. So those are the activities that I did before we went to the Gulf of Maine. And then, oh, hold on. I think I was going out. There we go. And then this is a couple pictures of us at the Gulf of Maine when we went. And then this is afterwards. And we've just been working on this the past couple of weeks. We're doing a weather and climate unit. And part of the CPOP book had them look at the weather here in Herman over 5 different days, and we discussed like the different types of weather, like rainy and sunny and windy and so forth. And then we went online on the smartboard and we gathered a bunch of data from FEMA to see the different natural disasters that have been documented for Herman. And then we looked at different parts of the United States. And then we looked at different climate maps over the United States and see the different types of climate, which brought us to the discussion of the difference between weather and climate, weather being, short term versus climate being more of an average and a long term. So we kind of saw the different types of weather and how it relates to climate. Whoops, sorry. Still getting used to this Prezi. All right. Then the next thing is we took the kit that Kim provided and we created weather stations. I split them into 5 different groups and allowed them to pick whichever weather instrument they wanted to create. Obviously, once it's first come first serve kind of a thing. Then we gathered the materials. A couple of the kids brought in materials that they had at home. The kit provided some, and then I also kind of went around and collected different things because there were kind of some odd things that they asked for in order to make these. And then like here are a couple of kids making the windmill, and it was really cool because some of the like one of the girls here, they didn't even ever used a hammer before, and of course I did the sawing and stuff like that, but we had to get out the drill, and it was kind of a fun experience. And then a couple of the girls, they're creating a thermometer here, and they had to paint the box white and so forth, and so we did that. And then I can't remember which instrument they're working on here, but it was really fun. The kids really enjoyed it. It was something kind of different out of the norm that we normally do, so that was really nice. And then they went and presented the weather instruments. So they shared their instrument with the rest of the class, and I showed them a few commercialized instruments that were provided in the kit, and we went outside to test them out. We looked at how they compare to the commercialized instruments. This is the weather vane all done, and then we had, she's looking at the thermometer. Then they were looking at the anemometer, I think it's called, and they had a blast with that, especially kind of blowing into it to see who could get the most wind. And then the last one, that one was the one that measured the humidity. That was quite difficult to do. They were kind of creeped out by using human hair, but we got it to work. And then finally we had the weather. I can't remember the name of that right now, but anyway, they really had a blast with it and getting outside. Like that was actually today. We went outside and tested all this stuff, and they had a blast getting outside and doing something different. So I asked the class if that was something that they wanted to do in the future, and they said that would recommend it for anybody. But those are the few things. I wanted to do the last one that was in the kit, which mentioned looking at a particular area and looking for signs of the changes of the season. But obviously I realized that I wouldn't be able to start that now towards the end of the year. But that's definitely something that I would probably do in the beginning of the year, is signing up for that program where you get to kind of share information with, not quite, with the University of Maine, I believe it was mentioned, and you look at a particular area in Herman and you look for different signs that it's starting to change over to fall and over to winter and spring and so forth, and you collect data to kind of contribute to the study. And I thought that would be really cool for the kids to get involved with. And that's it. I don't know. Hope that's good. Never really made a presentation before, so this is the first.
Well, it looks great, and it sounds like you had a lot of fun, and I love the idea of kind of trying to make your own instruments and then testing them against instruments that are already made. So that was really cool. Does anyone have any questions for Amanda?
Where did you get the basin that you used?
The basin,
Yeah.
it's part of the kit that CPOP has, that the curriculum that we have at the school. I'm not sure if you can purchase them individually, but if you were to Google CPOP, SEPUP, it's the Earth Science edition, and you might be able to get the those basins. You can probably purchase them, I imagine, like separate. But they're amazing. They're a lot of fun. The kids really get to understand it a little bit better when you have something like that.
I was thinking I might be able to makeshift something using rocks and some clear material over it.
Yeah, definitely. And the key is to have the water be colored, so it makes it obvious where the water line is.
Oh, thanks. That's a good idea.
Yeah.
No, that was really great. Some great ideas and really helpful for us for planning for next year. So,
Oh, thank you.
what grade do you have?
Sixth graders.
Sixth graders. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. I'm going to, Mary, are you ready to go? Mary and Deb?
Yeah, we're ready. Deb and I are ready to go. Yep.
Okay. So I'm going to switch it on over to you then. And so you should now be the presenter.
Okay, well, we first of all want to apologize for the fact our slideshow is not working properly, so we're going to have to show each individual slide rather than go in and have it go through the viewing scene and all that sort of thing. And also, we want to also tell you that to start out with, that Deb and I work in a district that has a set curriculum, so we can't. It's really difficult for us to go outside by doing, the landforms and all that sort of thing, because we're restricted to mixtures and solutions, oceans, and the environment. So basically, what we did was once we got back from the complex system presentation that we did in Portland, we pretty much did a lot of things that had to do with the ocean, like before we went into the lab, and also after as well. So these are some of the things that we did. One of the things at the beginning to show that the Earth is made up of both land and water, we got this activity, and I believe we had that also at the where we went to our workshop on the apples in the earth and cut them up. And so this was the paper that we used, and the kids had a lot of fun cutting the apples up into sections, and we're quite horrified at what a small sliver we grow our food on and what a small sliver we get our drinking water from. Second thing after we did that, this was a map that came out of some books, which I'll show you in just a moment. And what it was you inflated these globes that were like beach balls, and they were of the earth, and then the children had to answer questions using the beach balls and using this world map of currents. It told the children how the currents functioned in the world. And this activity came out of one of these two books. I believe it came out of Ocean Current. So these are the two books that we used pretty much through the unit. This is the next activity with the currents, and this is a prediction sheet, and you have to predict what you think will happen with salt water being in this bottle and fresh water being in this one. And with these, it's hot water and cold water, and you've got to predict what you think is going to happen. The salt water would be green, and this would be clear. This one would have been red, and this one would be blue. And this one is another experiment for hot water and cold water as well. And so they had to predict ahead of time, and then we did the experiments, and they actually found out what was going to happen. Of course, hot water rises and cold water sinks, and salt water sinks, and fresh water rises. So these are really fun. The kids had a blast doing this. Then finally, we did this, and they had to predict what they thought was going to happen with the 4 different types of water, and they were all dyed a different color. Like you can see, the red was hot and salty, and then the yellow was hot and fresh, and blue was cold and salty, and then the green was cold and fresh. And so they had to predict how they thought what was going to happen. And then they actually did the experiment, and they used test tubes and straws, and the the waters were in insulated cups that we got from McDonald's, so they would stay hot and cold. And the kids absolutely loved it. They walked around from station to station and had just a blast doing that. That was so much fun. And then one of the things that we did was the posters for the ocean animals, and this also came out of one of the books as well. And this is showing you what you had to do in the poster. Like you had to tell what's for dinner for these different species that we were doing. And then another part they had to do was where in the world would it be located. They got a map and they had to show where it was located and how they were caught. And they had to draw scale models or scale drawings of these ways that these animals were caught. And then the final thing was to make bulletin boards using those as your guidelines. And these are the final projects or posters that the children did. And the title of the bulletin board was "The Health of the World's Fishing Industry. Can we save our fish food?" And so, like, this one was the squid, and you can see that they had to have different categories, like what's for dinner, and what squid ate, and how they're caught, and again the scale model of the boat, where in the world, and they had to write about where they would find these, and who catches the most amount of these fish, and who eats the most too. They had to do like a key and told how certain countries ate them, where other countries caught more of them, what is known about it, and they were allowed to to print one really nice picture off the websites and put that in there, and what's happening in the industry and what's the big deal. Why is this animal in danger? And us the way we're fishing it. This one we did the walleye pollock, the shrimp, and the tuna, and the swordfish. Oh, I messed up here. Sorry about that. And the swordfish. And then
Oh, okay. And my class did a more basic report on a whale or a shark. They were given a copy of a keynote presentation, and part of it was learning how to actually use the keynote and then to find information on the web. And so they really loved doing this because they got to choose the shark or whale that they wanted to research. I think that's on their choice. We have that choice. So I just took some of their slides and made a quick composite slideshow. So they all loved different animals, but most of the boys all wanted a shark to research. Some had humpback whales. They had just I skipped through. Oh, I skipped through. Oh no, I got that one. All right. So this is coming out. It looks really funny on our screen. It's like huge. But anyway, they needed to find out where the animals lived, what they ate, how they were a part of the food web, food chain, what was important about them. So I just picked through and tried to get a little sample of everything that was in here. So they had a lot of fun sharing their slide presentations, finding pictures to go with them.
And then we dissected squid. We learned about this squid. It was so much fun. And we did, we had to fill out this paper on the external squid and the different parts. We had awesome squid this year too, because I had gone down to Market Basket, and the guy that was behind the counter, I said, "Do you happen to have any whole shrimp?" And he said, "Yeah, we just got a big shipment in." And I said, "Can I have your best ones?" And he was so into it. He gave me his best ones. They were perfect size. They were perfect. They had all the tentacles, everything. They were beautiful. Now we learned how to open it up, and Deb and I found this really great website. It's online that gives you a play-by-play dissection of a squid that a teacher is doing, and you can just have it up on the screen while you're doing it and making sure the children are understanding what's going on and stopping it anytime you want to. It's just wonderful.
One thing we did prior to the actual dissection was we showed a movie of live squid.
Yes.
In the ocean, and the kids really got a great appreciation for how beautiful those animals are and how smart they are. And one thing we were really stressing was for them to be respectful to different life forms. And I think that was really helpful prior to doing that.
And the name of the video was the incredible, is it something suckers? The
Incredible Suckers, yeah,
Oh,
and a
it's a
section in there
great
is all
video.
about squid. So in this little poster right here, you can see that in one of those pictures, we have the actual dissection occurring on the board, and then the kids were following along, and it was so helpful. The first year we did this, we did not have that website, and it was hard to get around to everybody, but it was wonderful. And even the very squeamish girls who didn't want to touch it at all were digging around trying to find the beak and asking if they could bring home an eyeball. So it was really great.
And then we ate it.
Then we cooked it up and ate it. And one of the excuse me, one of the teachers we work with has complained every year about the smell, and so we found out a day she had a doctor's appointment, and we quickly set it up and did our dissection while she was out of the building. So it was funny.
And then we played this game too. This was really fun. It was kind of it's called playing the web game. And the web, it's like you wear these tags around your neck of all the different kinds of animals, and then you take a ball of yarn and you throw it to one of the other people, one of the other animals, and you say how you affect them or how they affect you. So like, for instance, if you're the sun or the water, if you were the water and you throw it to the sun because the sun affects the water and causes the water cycle. So the kids really had fun doing that. Like they said, how come we can't do things like this every day? Yeah, I said, well, it'd be fun. And this, we even got into doing the fish bulletin board. This is their birthday bulletin board in our hallway. So we made all these fish up, and then the children had like a bubble that had their name and their birthday on it. And these are just some great resources that I thought people might enjoy seeing. I have a copy of A Drop Around the World, the book, and then this is the teacher guide that goes with it. And then another one that's really great is A Drop of Water, and it tells you about the water cycle. And of course, this one is a really fun book for the kids because it's got all kinds of things you can lift up and play around with. It's not a pop-up, but it's similar to that kind of a thing. So we really enjoyed going to the summer workshop with you. We really, really had a lot of fun with it, and we came back and did a lot of things with the ocean. But unfortunately, the kids, we don't have time to do them. We just did not have time to do any of the kids.
We squeezed in these activities even when we were supposed to be doing something else, just so we could do it.
Because we're supposed to teach nothing but reading and math.
And that was what we were told at the beginning of the year.
So we did our best.
Well, I think you guys did a great job. I think those all sound like really fun activities, and I love the bulletin boards and the kind of doing the equivalent of like a scientific poster for all the different species. And sounds like you guys had a lot of fun, and it's fine that you didn't use kits. You did it in a different way, which is perfect. So does anyone have any questions for Mary or Deb?
What was that
I do. I
website?
was wondering.
Sorry.
Oh, I can find it pretty quick. Well, it's on YouTube. You go onto YouTube and you just type in dissecting squid, and it will pop right up, and it's awesome. It's just awesome.
The kids are always begging me to do something with dissecting. I think that would be a really good idea.
It's
Did
not
you guys
broken
just use
off.
scissors? Like, is scissors the only like tool you needed to have?
Yes.
And what I particularly liked about it was that we really didn't waste the animal. We didn't just throw it away. We ate it, and the kids loved it.
Yeah, they did. The majority of them really enjoyed calamari. And
Nice.
it's pretty easy if you get one of those fry daddies. Because it's pretty small container. You can take it in, plug it in, cook it. It was fun.
That's a great idea.
We really, really, both of us, emphasized that this animal has sacrificed its life for you, and this is not a joke, and this is not something to be having. I mean, it's fun, but not to the point where you're being disrespectful of the animal.
Thank you so much for sharing.
So I have a question. Yeah, that was great. Some great ideas. What resource did you use to do the hot and cold water, um,
Um,
those
Let me
papers
go
that you
back up
had?
and show you
What was
because
that
that
resource?
is really incredibly awesome activity. It came out of these two books. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
It came out of these two books.
Okay,
I
yep.
do believe that I know it came out of Ocean Currents. Oh, they're very compatible with each other.
The Apple one came out of only one ocean.
It did. Yeah, yeah. The Apple one comes out of we kind of flip back and forth on it. The Apple one comes out of only one ocean, and then you go to Ocean Currents, and you teach them all about the way that the ocean is affected by the hot and the cold waters and all that sort of thing. And the maps and the globes really give them an idea of the how the currents act and what happens. And then you go into the animals that live in the ocean. And this only one ocean has a really big emphasis on the fact that our fishing industries are in danger, and shows the children, what is happening with them and why we should be concerned and what we can do to help save some of these animals before they become extinct. So I mean, it gives them a great outlook on when they hear, don't eat tuna because of such and such. They understand why.
Yeah, no, and it's so important to understand the hot and cold and how the water moves through too. And then when you go to GMRI, they have that background knowledge to understand
Yes.
it. But
And amazingly, they know so much about countries. I mean, they can find countries on the globe. And like when they first come into me, a lot of times in fifth grade, they don't know what continent they live on. But when you have a globe, an inflated beach ball globe in your hands, and you're turning it around, and you've got the earth in your hands, and you're being asked questions, that comes out of Ocean Currents as well. All these questions about name some countries that are landlocked. They don't have any frontage on the ocean, or uh, give tell the longest route that you can go on land. Draw it on your globe, because you use these markers that you can wash them off, or show the longest route you can go on the ocean. And then one of the last questions is, where is the cutoff point for the Atlantic Ocean? Well, there isn't any. Then they realize the title of that book. There's only one ocean. It's just that humans have named them different oceans. That's all. So that's really good for them too, to know that there's only one ocean, and that everything is affected. The whole oceans are affected by what we do anywhere on Earth.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that sounds great, and I love the dissecting and eating squid. I'm surprised you got so many people to try it. I know lots of friends who will not try calamari, so kudos to
Well,
you.
Deb and I are pretty good cooks, and we use lemon pepper. I think that's one of the secrets,
Ah,
and
I got
also ketchup and all that stuff.
it. Nice. So does anyone have any other questions or anything like that for Mary or Deb? Okay. Then Karen, I will turn it over to you. Um, and when you are ready, you can get started.
okay, so I do not have a presentation. I wish I did, but I'm sorry. Um, but we started out with talking about watersheds because we found I wanted to get some background for my students. We've kind of, like you guys, have been just doing a lot of math and reading, and science is my passion, and I've been trying to really bring it into my school and getting teachers to find time to do it, but it is tricky. So I started in September, and we started learning about watersheds, and I used the kit from GMRI, which was really helpful. And the one activity I did, which was the like the huge wrap, or I guess it was like painters when you cover up for painting, and it was the big large tarp, I guess. And then we dropped the chocolate kisses on it. Kids loved it. And I did it a couple times. So we put the kids underneath, so they were the mountains, and they all thought that it was gonna go to one place. They all predicted. I said, "Where do you think the chocolate kisses are gonna go?" And they all predicted, "Oh, it's gonna go to one place." And it was really fascinating to kind of, you know, um, disprove their conceptions. And so when of course it went down, and then they said, "Oh, it'll go to the lowest place," but it didn't. It went kind of all over, which was really good for them to see, because their prediction kind of changed their perceptions. And I did that with a couple of the classes, and they loved that activity. They wanted to do it like every day. And they wanted to eat the chocolate kisses. But then after the watershed, I had them go on Google Earth, and from the kit, we kind of looked at a lot of different watersheds, and we looked at the watershed near us. We're at East End. I teach fifth grade, so we're right in Portland, and we talked about the water, coming from the mountains. And then they actually looked at an example of a watershed, and then I had them draw their own watersheds, and they did amazing jobs. So they first had an example of a watershed that I printed off online, offline, and then they would actually go and kind of create a watershed where our watershed was. And I have all of them, and they're amazing. And I should, you guys have motivated me to make a slideshow after this of the things. Um, so after we talked a lot about watersheds, because I knew they wouldn't know that for GMRI, I knew they've done the water cycle, they've done all the stuff with water, but I don't think they knew that term. So that was good to really get that background knowledge. I used a couple of the other kits. The weather kit I used a little bit, but like you all, it's finding the time. And then trying to think the other kit, but after that, then I had talked to a couple of teachers who had done the GMRI, and they had said, one thing we noticed with our students, and we have about 85% poverty in our school, and I noticed that none of them had ever seen a lobster, like the majority of them. And so we didn't want them to get to GMRI and be like, oh, giggly, laughing about the lobster. And, so we thought, let's get the novelty, away. And so I brought in a couple lobsters. My husband's in the fishing business. So I brought in a couple lobsters, and it was awesome. I mean, the kids who wouldn't have picked it up, tried it, and we looked at them and we talked about them. And, of course, there was the screaming and the I don't want to touch that and everything, but it was really great because it took away the unknown, and so that when they got to GMRI, I knew they'd get serious and just focus on the scientific process that they were going to be doing. Um, and then after the lobsters and kind of talking about that's what we're going to do, and we did that right before we went to GMRI. We had talked a little bit about systems and ecosystems because that was our unit for the year. So GMRI was our kickoff for ecosystems. So we actually, talked a little bit about it, but then they went to GMRI. And one thing I would do differently next year is really talk about the scientific process, because you guys popped that up during our time there, and I would really home in more on that. And we did more from you guys. We did more of that, but I would start in September, and the teachers, the other fifth grade teachers, and I said same thing. We'd start it more in September, talking about the scientific process. And then after GMRI, we started creating something, these eco columns. It's through Carolina Biological, and it's awesome. You use Coke bottles, and you have to have 3 Coke bottles per pair of students, and you actually have you first start off with half of the bottle, and you create like the green, like the soil, the rocks, and in it there's all the Carolina Biological has the whole process. But we wanted kids to understand an ecosystem, so we created our own small ecosystems in these Coke bottles, and so you have layers of gravel and sand, and then you plant alfalfa seeds and they grow, and it's amazing. They grow really fast. And then you take another bottle and you make it as an aquarium. And we got fish, and we got snails, and we got crickets. And then you put the bottles together. There's 3 pieces to it. And you create these ecosystems, these mini ecosystems, and you have a netting so that the water is running off into the aquarium. And it was amazing how these things survived. I don't know how, but they did. And what was awesome is our whole big main question was, our essential question was, and it's from the Next Gen Science Standards, how does matter move through ecosystems? And so I really got into talking to the kids about the forms of matter, which they've kind of had a little bit of. But then we went on to talk about, well, what's the matter in your, we talked about solids, liquid, gases, and then we talked about what's the matter in your ecosystem. And they went back and tally marked how many solids and liquids and gases they had in the ecosystem. And then we had this talk science discussion about which there was more of in our ecosystems. And it was really fascinating because a lot of them are like, well, one of the discussions was, well, we have this, is it quantity or is it, what we can see? Because, gas you can't really see, but there is gas in there. And we had talked about all the decomposers and everything, but we got into a really good discussion about matter and that it moves through the cycle. And they want, that how the water goes through and then the animals get nutrients from the plants up top in the terrarium. And then from that, the kids actually, my hope was, but I'm only there part-time and it's tricky. But anyway, my hope was to do a keynote on how matter moves through ecosystems on our essential question. And we never quite got to that, but that would be something that they would document their eco columns as it was going on. And then at the end, we'd make a keynote showing each process of the eco column, and then observing the matter moving through it, when an animal died or whatever, and the decomposition and things like that. But they loved the eco columns, and if I could, it was amazing, because they got so into observing and taking notes and working in a science journal, and I think that's it. Yeah, that's about it.
Nice. Well, thank you for sharing. I honestly want to make an eco column for my desk. If
I
I
should have brought you one.
Yeah, that sounds great. And thank you, everyone. Well, oh, sorry. Does anyone have any questions for Karen?
I do.
Yeah, it sounds like fun, those eco columns.
The
They were
ecosystem in
great.
a bottle, my long-term sub did when I was on maternity leave this year, and she had a hard time like keeping it enclosed. Like, do you struggle with keeping the ecosystem enclosed at all?
No, I really thought they were going to topple over and spill, and it was going to be, really interesting. But, the kids took really good care of them, and they paired up. So we didn't have so many. So we only had probably, I don't know, 12 in the class. But you have to cut it the right way. But you have to have that middle piece. Did she use the middle piece? Because you have the top, and then you have the bottom, and then you should have a middle piece that fits them together.
Okay.
Does
I
that make sense?
I came in at the end of it
Yeah.
when my maternity leave was done. It was like towards the end of it, so they were just like throwing them away and stuff like that, or bringing them home.
Yeah.
But so that's what she mentioned, so I just figured I'd ask.
Yeah. And what was fascinating is like we put algae in there because from Carolina Biological, you order all the live animals. And I went and got fish. You're supposed to get guppies because then you can see them being born. But I ended up getting these um, zebra dannies or whatever, and they actually were really hardy. I didn't think they would be, but they. But I would recommend guppies because that's fun for the kids to see the babies, and then of course the mother eats the babies, which is another part of life, I guess. Yeah, but no, and then the algae. It was interesting too. The kids observed that in certain parts of the school, like in the other classrooms where there's a lot of sunlight, there was more algae, and whereas in other classrooms where it was darker. So there's a lot of great, and we had to kind of make sure that the water was the right. You have to be very careful what water you use and everything. But it was really fascinating to see the differences in the eco columns.
Mm.
That's really cool. So I have a question for you about when you did the watershed activity with the tarp over the kids and then you have them kind of rain down the chocolate kisses. Did you ever have issues with students, I guess, aggressively tossing candy at the students that were underneath the tarp? We've done it a couple times at the Children's Water Festival, and we've found that to be an issue.
Yeah. It was interesting because I had some people be underneath and then I want to throw I want to do the candy, but I actually demonstrated how water drops. It's like droplets. And yeah, I did have one or two, and then they didn't do it. I just said, listen, this is the rule. This is how it has to be done. But it's tempting. But for the most part, I only gave them like a couple, like 3 or 4 kisses. I didn't give them like a whole handful.
Yeah.
And we just talked about dropping them down. But yeah, there was some boys that wanted to test it, definitely.
The last time we
Kim, I
did it,
didn't know you were involved. Kim, I didn't know you were involved with the water festival.
we every now and then we have. I think the past 2 years, they've asked us to go there and do a little like presentation. So I don't know if we're doing it again this year or not, to be honest. But that was one of the activities we had done in the
Probably
past.
already.
Sorry, what'd you
Yeah,
say?
I think it's probably already. I think it's probably already happened.
Oh, sorry. I mean for the next school year. I guess I'm thinking in school years, not in.
Yeah, it's. I used to go to that. I used to take my kids to that every year. I can't tell you how impressed I am with that. I just think that was the most awesome thing for the kids.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a good time.
Well, it's like
Um,
going to
It is.
college. It's like going to college for a day.
it is. I mean, it's fun. You get to move around, and I've always been curious to know what the other sessions are that are going on. Sometimes you kind of see them
Oh,
from
they're
afar.
awesome. I used to put on a water festival every spring, one of the last days of school for the Baldwin, whole Baldwin school. My kids would put it on after they'd gone to it. It was just awesome. We loved it.
Nice.
When is it and where is it?
In
Oh,
Portland,
it's what is it? USM in
it's at
Portland?
the USM campus. You have to apply for it. You have to write out something that tells what you're going to do, and then if they choose they only choose a few schools. It's awesome. It's worth going to.
Yeah, and I think there's no charge, but don't quote me on
No,
that.
there's no charge, and they'll actually help you with the bus too. If you don't have a lot of money, if you're district's poor, they'll help you get with the bus getting in there. But they won't. I mean, I used to, at Baldwin. I probably did it. I probably got at least 6 of their T-shirts. I probably went at least 6 years.
That's
Who did you
interesting.
apply to?
You have to go. It comes. You got it. It's usually on. Usually comes to you as an email, and it's the water district of Portland that actually puts it on. They're the ones. So in the past it was always the same person that always sent me an email, but um, lately it's been a different person. And actually, I don't even think they sent me one this year because I hadn't applied for a couple of years. So you apply for it in the winter and you go in the spring, or at least that's the way it used to be. I don't know what it is now, but it used to come out like in December, and you had to have your application in by like the middle of January or something, and then they went over them and decided which schools they were going to accept, and then I think it was in May or June, and I usually they said, we'll only, if once you've gone once, we put you, the chances of you going a second year right in a row are pretty highly unlikely. But I went like 5 or 6 years right in a row, so I guess they liked what I wrote.
Nice.
Great, thank
Any?
you very much.
You're welcome. Oh, I was gonna say if you end up having students that are um, having trouble with the gentle rain or tossing of candy, what we've done in the past is actually take a bunch of boxes and things that are kind of different shapes and sizes and have them build their watershed and then drape the tarp over it. And so they could make like lakes, or they could make kind of forms of rivers or something like that. So it's another way of doing it or if you have a very small class size and you don't really have enough students to kind of split into 2 groups, you could do it that way too. Any other questions?
Very nice presentation.
Yes, very nice one and all. And
Yes.
there were lots of great ideas. All of the ideas having to do with kind of ocean currents and climate change and all that kind of stuff is kind of stood out to me, only because we're talking about new content right now. So we're all in the process of trying to figure out what we're going to do for activities and pre and post and all that. So there were a lot of really great ideas that I took away from it too. So thank you one and all for presenting and telling us what you've been up to.
Thank you. The thought of this
Thank
was a
you.
lot more scary than it actually was.
Yeah,
I
I'd already
agree.
done it. Yeah, and I'd already done it once, so I knew it was sort of fun, but I was also extremely nervous.
Ditto.
It's always a lot more nerve-wracking than you think it's going to be.
Yeah, it's true.